Welcome to CurveBall DFI-ed. I'm your host, David Iofi, and on our 11th podcast, we have the pleasure of having David Sirchenko. Sirchenko is currently working on his business degree at Baruch College, and while pursuing it, he is working as a commercial mortgage broker. In today's podcast, we'll talk about what inspired David to pursue his business motive and how he was able to establish himself in his current position. Thank you, David, again so much for coming on today on the podcast. We want to go straight into it. Kind of like on a bad note, kind of sad note. So you definitely, as people may know this, kind of doing a little bit of research, you come from Staten Island. It's like a touchy subject for a lot of people because it's like the borough, which is the most remote out of the 5 boroughs. How did that affect your growing relationships with people outside of the borough?
Right. Well, first off, I want to thank you for having me on the podcast, David. Really appreciate it. Pleasure is all mine. I would say networking with people outside isn't as tough. It hasn't proven to be that much of a difficulty. I kind of just learned to make friends within the borough, and I guess on the commutes, which is where I made a lot of my friends. I guess before my college career, and then during my college career ongoing while we were pre-pandemic era as well. On the train rides, on the express bus. We'd like bond over that in high school. Nothing else to bond over, I guess, back then. But I wouldn't say it proved that much, especially now. Now we have a lot more cars on the road. Everyone's driving. I wouldn't say it's proven to be difficult at all to network and I guess reach out and connect with people.
Yeah, I mean, being in New York City, you have access to a lot of resources, and definitely living closer to Manhattan, which is where all the financial stuff is going on, is definitely a plus. But I think that if you are in other boroughs, which are a little bit more remote, it's not really an excuse, because now with Zoom, you have the ability to schedule meetings with anybody in person. And if it is something that does extend a little bit more and is definitely more serious, you could always commute. Could you talk a little bit more about how, when you decided that this is like the time for you to take your risks, and you decided that you're going to work full time?
Right. So it wasn't something that it just, that I decided on. And then, I just kind of stuck with it. I woke up and said, I want to go full time. It kind of just, the opportunity found me. I didn't find the opportunity. It just kind of, I guess it's a mix of luck that and then once I saw it, I took the opportunity and then, really took advantage of it. It came to me, the opportunity to become a commercial mortgage broker. And then once I was in it, I was like, okay, let me dip my toes. Let me see. I felt like the real estate game, because I was never really fond of it before I was in it. And then once I got in and, I dove in, I gave it my all 100%. And then a month of being there, I was like, wow, this is great. I really love it. And then I realized there's some future here. And I started laying out my, my future path. And I could really visualize, and I was like, okay, I could see myself doing this, and this. 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, I could see how I'm going to put, the food on the table for my family, how I'm going to support my existing family, how it could benefit the people around me, friends and non-friends included. And that's when I fell in love, and I was like, this is something that I have to devote my my full time to. So that's when I made that jump from part-time gigs to full time.
Yeah,
which is still what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, you said you fell in love. What specifically did you fall in love with?
Right. So I fell in love with kind of the real estate industry as a whole. So I'm on the, the lending side. But, when I got into the game, I realized we're not the ones that make the real money here. The real money is made by our clients, the borrowers, the people that actually invest in real estate to achieve that passive income. Because I feel like that's the that's the only way to passive income. Of course, you could achieve it through multiple avenues, but passive income is the way to achieve true financial freedom. And through real estate, there's so many plus sides that make it so appealing. Like, you could invest with majority of other people's money. You could invest. It's you get the house basically for free because your tenants pay for it. So the house is paying for itself, and it's putting money in your pocket. And it's using other people's money to buy the deal. Who wouldn't want that to establish their financial freedom? So I just fell in love with that aspect of it. And then now, as I'm walking around, all those real estate terms, I look at every property and I'm like, oh, like I can see this being improved to it, or I can see like value here, or I see, let's say, like a mixed use property that has a commercial component to it, or I see like a school, or I see like a hotel, and then I start thinking like I'm already in that mindset of like, oh, is this profitable? What area is this in? How would this look like? What if there's crime here? How would this look, on this building, in the area, and then at this time with current market. So yeah, I guess it's kind of taken over me, and I found my love for it and passion for sure.
Yeah, it sounds kind of easy where you just think about it in theory. You use other people's money to borrow it, you get a good loan, you buy a property, you get tenants, and then they kind of pay off. But in reality,
Right.
it's not so simple.
Not at all.
What are some qualities that you've realized through your experience that makes like a good, like the person that is in charge of the deal?
You mean on the broker side? Like, what deal? Do you mean on the commercial broker side or on?
Yeah, no, the owner of the project. What makes a good owner of the project?
So first things first is due diligence. So by due diligence, I mean doing the research, right? So I feel like that's the most important part. You have to know what market you want to invest in, and by market we mean not like time wise, we mean like region. So the market of like New York City, right, which is where we live in. And then on top of that, you have to focus, you have to really hone in and figure out what sub-market you want to invest in. So I want to invest in, let's say me personally, because it's in my backyard, Staten Island, New York. So that's a sub-market I want to invest to. So I have to do that part. Then I have to figure out what type of property I want to buy. I have to figure out where to find this type of property, in what area in Staten Island I want to buy this property. Who do I have to reach out to find these types of property? And then once I've found a certain property, I need to have a team on standby. So that team would include, and isn't limited to, obviously, a good accountant that would help me structure, my LLC that I would create when purchasing the property, my lawyer that would look over all the documents and the paperwork that would, once it comes time to closing and signing term sheets and commitments and anything else that has to do in paper with potential partnerships, I need a handyman on the side. I need anybody associated with the handyman, for instance, like a plumber, electrician, anybody that can fix utilities. So if any of my tenants have a problem, they call me at any time of the day or any time of night. I call my handyman or anybody on my team, and they should be readily available. Right now, who else is on my team? Other people on my team would be, thankfully, I'm fortunate enough. My current boss who I work with, he's like a mentor to me, and he said he would advise me on any part. I've managed to make a lot of strong relationships this past year that I could call part of my team if I ever need them to be on my side. I think it's also good on to have on your team agents and brokers that would help you analyze the deal as well as figure out if it's the right market or really the right deal for you. So I guess it's like just extra layers of like reassurance having all these people on your side, because it shows you that the deal you're getting into really is a profitable deal.
There's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of managing going on, and you have to be on top of everything because you could mismanage the money very easily. When all of it is said and done, what is the the average percentage that the buyer actually ends up making on it, because he still has a bunch of expenses, or are they kind of negligible because the profits that he's making are so large?
Right. So if we kind of simplify this, let's say if the tenant gives you, tenant pays rent every month, so that would be your profit, right? Your gross. But obviously, there's a lot of expenses to be paid. So the expenses would include stuff like taxes, insurance, potential management fees if you're not managing the property yourself, utilities, legal and accounting fees, like we mentioned earlier. Anybody else that's on your payroll, like the handyman that we mentioned earlier, you need to have money set aside for repairs and maintenance. So just in case something goes wrong with your roof or your siding, or or you need to, just anything that goes wrong with the house, like structurally, that needs to be repaired. You need to have an alternative, a separate account where you can pull money out of for a rainy day. So once you get your income minus all those expenses we just listed, you get this thing called NOI, which is a term quite often used in the real estate industry. It's called net operating income. So income minus expenses. So that's usually what people that's what people think they take away. But in reality, you also have to pay off your mortgage on the property, right? So in the real estate industry, we call that debt service. So it'd be NOI minus debt service. That's what you take away at the end of each month or year, depending on how you want to look at the numbers. And if we're putting that into percentage wise, I guess a big number, a big word that you might have heard or that's thrown around a lot in the real estate game is called cap rate, right? So cap rate is basically how much money you would make if you sold a property right now, like a percentage of the property's worth. So cap rate is basically your NOI, so income minus expenses, divided by the property value, right? So yes. The higher the cap rate, the more money you're taking in each month. So when you're buying a property, you want to look for those higher cap rate properties. So in the city, you're not making as much money because it tends to be overpriced. And the market is so hot there that the cap rates are like 2%, 3%, maybe even lower. And that's awful, right? So when you get down to Brooklyn, Staten Island, the boroughs, it's like 5 and up. So 5 and up is where you really want to buy. 8 is great. But then if you go past 10, it's like it's not too good to be true. It's usually like really poor areas where the property is just so the value of the property is just so low because of the area that it's in, because of potential high crime rates and and a ton of vacancies in the area, that it's just so low that the cap rate seems so high, but in reality it's not actually it's not realized because there are no tenants there, or it just doesn't work out.
Yeah. I mean, definitely very interesting knowledge for somebody who's interested in the sector. It definitely sounds like you know a lot about this industry already. What is the importance of your current education that you're getting from Baruch to what you want to do?
Right. So I would say that there isn't too much of an emphasis on the education, and there isn't too much of a connection between what I am currently learning in school and my actual profession. Of course, it's forced learning because we have to go. I mean, it's forced, like for me at least, because I want to get my degree, at least my undergraduate degree. So I have to go to my classes. I have to learn what's expected of me, and in turn, I can take away some things. But I can tell you right now, like I'm taking some real estate courses right now, and there are some takeaways. But if I'm being honest, if I were to take those courses before I got into the real estate game, I would have definitely not fallen in love with real estate. Like the classes are just, I don't think, being taught in a way that makes people fall in love with real estate. They're taught from a perspective of like the corporate world that just kind of gives people those standard 9-to-5 jobs of the keyboard warriors, where all they do is just analyze every single day. In the city, they go to those buildings, and it's just the constant circle of you get on the train, you go to work 9 to 5, but you're in the real estate game. But it's the same thing as if you're in the real estate game, or if you're working for JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or whatever. It's just you're working with properties and not with other companies. So that's kind of what the education is tailored toward in my my undergraduate business degree. And I mean, nothing's being taught to me that I guess if not needed, I can't learn on my own. So I guess it's convenient that they're already teaching it to me, some things that I can take away. But if I ever needed to do it on my own, I'd probably do it more efficiently, and I'd be able to take away more because I'm doing it with a greater interest, as opposed to in school where there's only one method of learning because you only have one teacher for the course.
Yeah. Do you think that it's mandatory in order to get a college degree in order to do what you do?
I don't think it's mandatory. I think it definitely helps because, obviously college, as we know, isn't isn't favored in the entrepreneurial world. It's not necessary. It actually kind of hinders the entrepreneurial process because it doesn't grow entrepreneurs. It grows 9-to-5ers. It grows your typical middle class, which is why a bulk of the students just go into the bulk, which is the middle class. So I don't think it's necessarily important. I think in our industry, what's more important, I mean, actually in most industries, but specifically in ours, I would say, from experience, a behavioral standpoint, if you have a certain skill set that's not necessarily as granular as learning how, what's taught in school and in textbooks, but are you hardworking? Are you loyal to your company? Are you willing to learn on the job? Just all these behavioral mindsets that that show that because once you're on the job and you're actively doing what's required of you, you learn way faster than through a textbook or through a written course by a professor who is not even in the field himself most of the time. But again, that's just the way I look at it.
I think it matters what school you go to and what you're studying. For example, at Stevens, I'm taking a course, and the professor for the course, first lecture, we come into class, he starts talking to us about how this is going to be a really fun business class. And then he kind of gives us a background on himself. And in his background, he mentioned that he started a business and it failed. And then he's like, so clearly I'm qualified to teach this course. So he kind of made it into a joke. But in reality, you probably shouldn't be teaching a business course if you had a previous business and it completely failed. But when you go to schools like Stanford that have professors like Peter Thiel from, I'm reading his book right now, From Zero to One, amazing book for all entrepreneurs. And when you go to like schools that are specialized in certain things, I think it definitely, you do learn significant things from professors, because the professors in those positions, they had to study multiple years to get there. And I think that you could actually take real knowledge. But that always comes with like getting your master's. I think that that's like the type of education that ultimately would benefit me and as well as other students. Are you going to end up going to get your master's, or you think that once you're done with your bachelor's, goodbye school?
Yeah, it's definitely goodbye school for me. Unfortunately, I will not be pursuing my master's because of how much time it's occupying me. How much time it's taking me right now to put toward my future. That it's actually really hard to balance school and the full-time job, and the side hustle of getting that passive income to get that financial freedom that I want in the future, 10 or 15 years down the line. So what I have my master's is only going to be more tedious and more difficult than the undergraduate degree. And thankfully, it's not necessary for my line of work or to achieve the financial freedom, because that's, I'm going to venture on my own. I'm not going to really be working for anybody to do that. And, I don't need the master's degree to sell myself to partners. I'd rather establish personal relationships with them where they can see me for who I am and not for my degree.
Yeah, it's one of those things where in certain careers it is needed and in others it isn't. Personally, for myself, I am going to try to get my master's because in the financial investing side of things, a master's from like a top 5 university, you could learn significant things. And I did want to go to college to learn, and unfortunately, I didn't learn too much. Thank you, Stevens. You did mention how it's hard to manage work and school. Can you talk about how you're currently managing it and ultimately what you're going to do until you graduate?
Right. So definitely right now, I would honestly say that most of my emphasis is going toward my work and my side hustle, because I feel like, immediately and in the not so immediate future, that would provide more of a benefit to me than me getting an A or an A minus on my paper test, because I'll finish the degree. I'll 100% finish the degree. It's required of me. And I still want to live, under my parents' house. I don't want to get kicked out. I definitely need to get that degree. And I'm also going to school for free, and I only have a year left. So it just doesn't make sense for me to not get the degree. It's good to have, although I don't, like I said before, it's not needed. It's definitely good to have in your back pocket because of uncertainties that may occur in the future. You never know, right? So I think it's definitely a good backup, something good to have in your, in your back pocket. And at the end of the day, it is still like a social norm where people that don't have a degree are, whether we like it or not, kind of looked down upon. It's like, oh, he's a dropout. He didn't finish his college degree. Where if you do have a degree, you just get a a little bit higher automatic respect from certain people. Whether I agree with it or not, I'm not going to change the social norm of it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely makes sense. It is one of those things that I think is hard to manage for most people. So personally for myself, I work before class, I go to class, and then I work after class. And I try to schedule days for myself where the only thing I worry about is work. I'm really grateful for my school for making sure that that isn't possible for me next semester and kind of messing everything up for me. So thank you to them for that.
Likewise. Yeah,
But
actually, so oh, go ahead.
But I think that it's one of those things where it's like those obstacles right now will just make it so much easier for me once I do graduate. Because if I am able to manage my work, my school, and my side hustles all at the same time, once one third of those responsibilities gets off the table, it's going to be so much easier for me to focus on the other things. And I'm just looking forward to the day that I do graduate and I can put all my emphasis on just my side hustle and my business.
Amen. I definitely agree. And then when it comes to the schedule, I like to, when I'm making my class, I like to plan, because I came to my, my boss and I was like, listen, I'm going to go to school next, because I started working in the summer. So and then I was registering for classes for the, the fall and then the spring. And I was like, listen, I'm going to go to school. Should I skip, should I take 2 days off of work, or how should we structure it? He said, no. Like, yourself, you need to be here. He's like, you need to take night classes, but you still need to be at work. You still need to have those full-time hours because, our job requires us to be on the call during those 9 to 5 hours. So the way I structure my classes, I'd have classes twice a week after hours, so after work, so I could still get my full, full days of work done. And I try to get as many classes as I can online so that I could find some time, maybe, after work or before or like during my lunch break to take classes as opposed to traveling to the city, which is like 2 hours of my day just on travel. To take the class that could ultimately be taken online. And another thing is that it's not just like you said, school, side hustle, and job. They need a balance. We also have to balance like our social life and our families. That's 5 things we have to. And of course, it concerns me and you, but not everybody. But for us, it's also like our fitness, like our physical health. So it's like, we have to work out every day. We have to like eat properly. We have to be with our loved ones. We have to be with our friends. Our loved ones. And once school's out of the picture, I think we definitely have a lot more time to delegate to our side hustle, our future, and our existing relationships, so we can strengthen everything and then just kind of solidify and just become a better person overall. I mean, that just for me. I guess it doesn't apply to everybody, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, and I think that also trying different things, working out different schedules, doing different things as a career is also really important, because through that you're able to figure out what you do like and what you don't. Earlier in your career, you were working with cars and the leasing companies, and then you ultimately switched to the real estate sector, which is completely different. I wanted to ask you, what made you want to switch?
Right. So it's like we mentioned in the in the beginning of the podcast, where it's not that I ultimately made the choice to switch, is that the opportunity just fell in my lap. And as everybody knows, with the current condition of the market, that the car industry just is not doing well right now. I was offered multiple positions in the leasing industry, which is where I wanted to kind of prove myself and get that sales skill under my belt. So when the opportunity came to me, and then so I got the leasing offers, and then they said, listen, you can come here and you could find us 10 clients a week. We just won't have 10 cars to give you. There are no cars. So I said, okay, that's obviously not, doesn't sound very lucrative or promising, or like I'm going to learn a lot from it, because I know the people that work there, they do tend to be lazy. So I want to be on my own. Whereas here I got a great offer into a brand new industry where I could learn a lot and it could prove to be really lucrative. So that's what I went to, that's what I went with. I went to, like I said earlier, I dipped my toes and then I fell in love.
Yeah. I mean, switching industries is always hard, but there's always takeaways and knowledge that you could bring from the previous job to the current job. What is some skill that was transferable?
So I'll say some skill is kind of, I mean, I don't know if it would apply to everybody that works in the car industry, but at least for me, I would try to think outside the box of how to kind of make my day-to-day operations more efficient, and also have enhance on them. So, like, for example, our bosses would give us incentives for bringing in clients. So we started working out, like me and my friends that work together, we started working out a potential partnership structure that we would present to our bosses and say, listen, we're going to give you this amount of clients a month for this type of cut. And then eventually we want to become like salesmen under you guys. And then eventually we'd open up our own company, and become your competitors with the clients that we have. And then we started talking about a whole marketing campaign. We started looking into photographers, into social media specialists to kind of grow that, to kind of grow our clientele. So I guess how that translates here is it taught me to think outside the box and not just stick to the structure that was given to me, but to kind of create my own structure so that I could strive and then kind of stick out from the rest, which is what I am doing currently.
Yeah, I mean, you always have to think outside the box, and especially when you're in a position where you definitely initially know less than other people, you definitely have to think about what could you do different. What gave you the confidence that like you could do this, being probably one of the youngest people for the office that you work at?
Right. So firstly, I want to thank my haters because as unfortunate as as it is, but it's the truth. There are haters in every industry, but I'm just one of those guys where the haters would only push me and not discourage me. So I got that from my parents. My parents are the same way. So if I have people at work or people in my, obviously not in my surroundings, I like to surround myself with supportive, like-minded individuals. But if I have people telling me you can't do this, or don't try to reinvent the wheel, stop trying to think outside the box, just do what's required of you, just stay here and within these parameters, and then everything's gonna go okay. And I'm like, okay, so I'll do it my way, and then once I'm right, I'll prove you wrong. And that just kind of pushes me to not only think outside the box, but to actually act on it and be successful with it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely proving the haters wrong is a motivation for myself, and I know for a lot of other people that are or entrepreneurs. I think that another thing that does push people kind of like out of this imposter syndrome is realizing that other people that are in their current positions feel the same exact way that you do. It's just like one of those things that you do have to overcome, and the faster you do overcome it, you can kind of start experiencing the work for what it is. But you working with clients and cold calling people and trying to reach out to people is difficult. How do you prepare for those meetings?
Right. So first of all, when I prepare for my meetings, like you asked me earlier, how do you prepare to become a borrower? It's due diligence, right? So you have to know who you're speaking to first, and you have to have all your talking points laid out in front of you. So some of the things I'll have in front of me when I'm talking to a client or a potential referral base or maybe a lender is, if they're new, I'll have information about them. So let's say I found a new client on LinkedIn, right? So as I'm talking to them, I'll have their LinkedIn profile right in front of me where I could quickly browse, quickly search something up. If they're talking about a lender, quickly look at the lender. If they're talking about a company that they're a part of, I can quickly look up the company, or I can look in their profile whether it verifies what they're saying. And another thing I would say is it's really, really important to always take notes. So no matter what conversation I'm having with who, in the professional setting, I'm always with I don't have a notebook, but I have like an iPad where I have all my notes in. So I always take notes and then record them, because I think, when you have that I guess paper to mind connection, you get to remember more. And just in case, you can't retain all that information from the phone call, at least you'll have it in your notes.
Yeah, so obviously the industry changed probably before people were using notepads and pens, and now we're using iPads, recording devices. Right. We're able to have the meetings over Zoom, use Calendly to schedule the meetings. What do you think the commercial mortgage brokerage system is going to look like in the future?
So unfortunately, I don't think there's that much room for innovation because of the way the system is set up. So, our business relies heavily on banks, and which do actually lend the money. I'm just the broker between the banks and the borrowers, which would be the buyers and investors in this case. And the banks, if there's a trend, the banks are always last to hop on. They love to be old school. They have a ton of papers, and because banks are all about safety, right? That's the one thing we always ask ourselves is if we're talking to a client, we always want to ask them, how we always think, how is this going to look like to the bank? How is the bank going to react to this? Is it safe for them? Are they going to want to move forward on this? So, because the way the bank works, in processing the loan, is they have to do a lot of underwriting. Now, underwriting just means review and due diligence. So they still need to order appraisals, which is which an appraiser, a respective appraiser will come to the property and give the property its appropriate valuation. So let's say if you think the property is worth $700,000 and the bank comes and orders an appraisal and realizes it's worth $600,000. So that appraisal takes time. Then there's also an environmental that's part of the process, which determines if there's any environmental issue with the property. Is there a gas leak? Is there chemicals? Is everything good with is there like a pest infection? Anything that has to do with this. And then they also just have to underwrite the deal and look to see if they like the market that it's in, if they like the building itself. Do they like the person that's borrowing the money? Is he credit worthy? Right. So there's a lot of just kind of reviewing and analyzing that goes into it, that even if you automate and make everything paperless, there still has to be somebody behind it that has to underwrite everything. Now, I do think that maybe in the future, of course, that would be great if we could kind of robotize everything on the loan side. So, where you put all the info into the into, let's say, a database, and then it's either green works, yellow maybe works, or like red doesn't work at all, and then you get your loan approved that way. Now, I think there's a big fault in that, and the big fault in that is that it's it really becomes non-negotiable, and it also kind of becomes a monopoly because there's only there's one database basically that you would go to. Whereas with banks, you have different lenders with different criterias, and they all have their own underwriting process, and they all have their own different negotiating points, and which one to go to for which one of your cases.
Yeah. So based on that explanation, I think that the system is definitely not going to be changed anytime soon. And if it is changed and somebody is able to figure it out, that person will become extremely wealthy and successful because they will monopolize the sector. So 100%. If there are any entrepreneurs out there, if you figure this out, this is definitely a good way for you to become a legal monopoly. Good luck somebody else trying to figure it out. So you definitely spoke a lot about like what you're doing now, and now being a junior in college. Obviously, you see things now differently than you were when you were a freshman. What is something that you wish you did right when you entered college?
Right. So, obviously, I'm not going to say I regret any of my decisions or anything. And just it caused me to, to learn from what I did in the past. But knowing what I do now, if I were to go back, I would probably put more emphasis on bettering myself and kind of getting into the starting my journey earlier. So I would, I would probably 100% start reading earlier. So I would have picked up books early on in my career, and I would have definitely started becoming more interested in money and how the finances works. I could, faster realize, maybe I could have been where I am today 2 years ago. And then today I would have already been that much closer to realizing my goal of financial freedom.
And yeah, definitely learning and reading is something that I do recommend for every single person, whether 100%. It's literature or like a Get Better book. I personally like reading biographies and seeing kind of like how personal growth works with certain people. So reading about like Steve Jobs, Prime Minister Churchill, a bunch of world leaders, you definitely start to see how these people got into the position of power and how they did certain things and why they were so respected. But one thing that always comes across is how they network to where they're at and the people that they surrounded themselves with. Networking is really important, and you did mention about how you do spend time on LinkedIn, probably the number one way to network with people in the world. Can you explain the importance, first of all, of what networking means in your industry?
Right. So I think in real estate, actually, networking and relationship building is the most important part of it, because the more people you have on your side, the smoother the ride is. So, especially with the stringent laws we have in New York, anything that you do needs to be approved by the municipalities and the laws that oversee it. So you definitely want to, let's say if you're doing some kind of construction, there's a bunch of permits that need to be pulled for you to be able to do that. So you need to have approval from the from the respective authorities, and if you have a strong relationship with them, automatically you have a higher success rate of of accomplishing what you see, what you sought out to do. And I also think it's important because if you have a strong relationship, it's easier to get a loan on the property. It's easier to find properties. It's easier to find partners that would work with you in the future. It's easier to find potential buyers when you want to sell property. So all the moving pieces just come together when you have them on standby from your pre-existing relationship that you've built up through networking.
Yeah, I mean, you probably spend hours and hours trying to find these people. Can you give some tips and tricks on how you find them and how you get them to connect with you?
Right. So I definitely am an avid user of LinkedIn. I think it's a great platform that I highly advise everybody to take advantage of. Every professional, or at least the professionals you want to work with, are on LinkedIn. So I'm not really on their explore page. It's just sort of their version of social media, where they'll mimic Facebook and Instagram, and now even like Snapchat. So what I'm there doing is on the networking tab, where I would just find people with titles that I need, that I need to connect with. So I'll either look for lenders to find, to have them in my back pocket for when existing clients come along, and then mostly I use them to find new leads. So I'll find either somebody that could find me new buyers. So I'll either reach out to agents, lawyers, accountants, or I'll go direct to the source and find the people that are investing themselves. And I'm on there, and once you're really on top of it and you work on it, at least you spend like an hour every day, maybe even less, maybe a little more, you can get up to maybe around. I mean, right now I'm doing 100 connections a day. I mean, a week. 100 connections a week. So I'm expanding my network at a really rapid rate, and it's allowed me to to have some. I already created some really, really fantastic relationships with some people that I do see in my future and helping me out in my future. And I've also met some people that would help me out just in my business itself. And I've also been able to help out people with whatever their needs were, either telling them where they are in their journey, or how we could be of service to them.
Yeah, I mean, definitely sounds like you're on the right track. But entering the workforce, you definitely make mistakes in the beginning. What was like the biggest mistake that you made right away?
I don't know if it was right away, but if I had to think early on, one of the blunders we had was I was tasked with working with one of my coworkers, and I had to create an offering memorandum, which is basically a summary of the project that's trying to be that needs to get financed. So the borrower didn't have one, so we had to create one for them because it was a sizable loan. So usually you would create an OM, so the offering memorandum's OM. You would create the OM for sizable loans to make it nice and pretty and doll it up to the bank, so the bank could see this huge loan with all these intricate numbers in one 10, 20 page summary. So I was tasked with creating this OM, which I had no idea what it was at the time, and we had a template that was really poorly created. But I worked with what I got, and then there was poor communication between me and my coworker, and he said it was very it was really urgent, and we were really pressed for time. And then I guess I kind of just laid it off because I didn't it didn't seem as urgent to me based on how he was looking at it, and the OM didn't really turn out the way that he wanted it to. So after that, I set out and I said, listen, I'm gonna create my own template for an OM, and then I'm going to make this OM so great for my own deals that when everybody else needs an OM, they would use my template. And I've actually realized that. So now the template that I created for the OM is now used all across my company. So anybody that needs OM will go to my template and they'll create it in a really simple and efficient way to make it nice and pretty for the lenders.
Yeah. It sounds like you're doing a lot of stuff that's helping your company. In certain professions, like if you're a portfolio manager, you own the right to your algorithm when you're buying and selling pairs. In commercial mortgage brokerage, are you the person that owns like the right to all your forms, or do you get like thank you from your boss, or what happens when you create all these forms?
Right. So it's not as I guess it's not as there isn't that much of an emphasis on rights in our industry. So if I would create an OM example, I don't necessarily need the rights for it. I could create. It's not that intricate of an OM. It's just something that's really efficient and easy for everybody in the office to use. So I did it for myself, and if anybody needs to use it, I'll be glad to help them out. It's not like I need the rights to it, and we don't really have rights on our formulas either. We'll just send them out in a way that wouldn't allow them to change anything on the actual template.
Makes sense. We want to end off the podcast kind of on like a lighter tone. So we're gonna ask you a couple questions, and we just want to hear like what you would give advice on. So the first question that we have for you is like, what book would you recommend?
100%, I would recommend Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I actually have it coincidentally right here. Old book. It's like ripped up. It's all underlined. I definitely recommend this book. I read it twice in the past 2 years. A great book to kind of realize where you want to be in life and how to realize your, if you want financial freedom or if you want a 9 to 5. It's a great book for financial literacy, in my opinion.
Yeah. How old you are and feeling like you are too young to be in a certain industry.
Right. So I'm 21, and I definitely think I'm on the younger side in my industry because, sometimes I get asked like, how old am I? And then I'll just skew the answer and say, I'm in my 20s. And they'll be like, no, how old? And I'll be like 21 or 20. They'll be like, okay, you're like a child or whatever. And then they automatically, don't take you as seriously. So thankfully over the phone or in person, I have that like older appearance and nobody knows that I'm actually 21 and still in school. So it's all about how you present yourself, really.
Yeah. The final question is how important is your confidence?
I think confidence is really, really important. So currently my confidence is not where I want it to be. I think it's still, it's greatly improved over the years since I started my journey, but I don't think it's where I want it to be. But then again, I also do have really high standards for myself on my journey. But I do think confidence is a great tool to have. It it allows you to carry yourself differently when you're talking to people, of different calibers.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on to our podcast. If you have, if anybody's looking to be a buyer, whatever, a seller, if they're interested, something that you could help them with, we could definitely put your information in the show notes. And what is the best way for people to contact you if they're interested?
So the best way to reach out to me would be by cell. Either give me a call or shoot me a text. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable, you could just reach out to me by my work email. If you need any help with you need any advisement in your commercial properties, or you need any commercial financing needs, feel free to reach out. With any questions you may have, just call, text, email me, whatever's comfortable for you.
Thank you so much for coming on today's podcast. We hope you had a great experience at CurveBall DFI-ed, and we may see you again in the future.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Look forward to it.